from Wimberley, Texas, and Marie from Unapologetically Gomes out in California. Thanks for joining us. This week we are going to talk about trip planning. So you tell us, when you plan a trip, how do you decide where you're going to go? For us, living and traveling full time in our RV, it gets a little complicated because sometimes we have obligations or things that we specifically, want to be in a certain area for. So, for example, we just came to Northern Virginia because our oldest son got married. So that kind of dictated our travel path. What are some other things we think about picking where we're going to go?
Up until now, we've always thought about being close to an airport because of my work and my work travel, but that should be ending soon, very soon. And we also thought about if there was certain campgrounds that we preferred to stay in, like if it's a KOA or a Jellystone or a private campground, or if there's a military campground nearby. We always sort of structured our travel around those as well.
And our immediate travel now for the next couple of months is going to be based on visiting family because we have decided to go out west next year, and most of our family's in the southeast, so we wanted to go ahead and visit them and spend a little time with them before we go southeast. So we're in Virginia right now visiting our oldest son, and then we're going to go down to Tennessee and visit my parents, go further south to Florida, visit Sean's parents.
And then we have a couple of obligations in there. One is Nomad Fest, which is going to be in Texas in October. So we'll be out there for that. So that affects our trip planning a little bit. And then we've already made plans for a couple of spots after Nomad Fest before we actually head further west. We're going to spend Thanksgiving in San Antonio or just outside of San Antonio. And then we're going down to Big Bend for a couple weeks to enjoy that national park.
Yeah, we've never been there before, and we're going to be meeting up with some friends. So that was another thing that helped us pick a location. When we were in San Antonio last time, we met some folks, and they actually met us via social media, I think, maybe RV Village.
Yeah.
And they're retired Air Force also and full-time in their fifth wheel. And they told us how great Big Bend was. And so we decided to go together. We said, well, we know we're coming back out here. Let's see what we can work out. So we're pretty excited to see them again, and also just to explore Big Bend. And Karen, we're going to be in Castroville, so definitely hope to see you there.
Yeah, we'll be there the whole month of November, I think.
Yeah, pretty much. I think we leave November 26th, but we get there at the end of October. We'll be there for a full month. So then after that, we kind of get to pick where we're going to decide just based on whim, right?
Well, I think we're going to have to do a little planning because we'll be traveling through the South and the Southwest. So we have to, it's going to be crowded that time of year, December, January, February timeframe. So we'll have to start making plans pretty soon.
Yeah.
And start making reservations. And
we're definitely planners, I think, because last year we planned this epic 8-month tour of Florida, all the way around the state, down to the Keys, all the way up the other side of the state. Hurricane Irma threw a wrench in our plans about 2/3 of the way in, but still, it was important to plan because we wanted to go to some places that get booked pretty easily. We wanted to do a lot of state parks, and those in Florida, a lot of times you have to plan that out pretty far advance, especially when you want to stay for any length of time. And so that's kind of our second point, is how long do you like to stay when you travel to a location? I think our ideal is probably a month, would you say?
Yeah, a month. But now that we're getting these new batteries and this new stuff, we're going to try some COE parks.
That's Corps of Engineer, for anyone doesn't know.
And maybe some other state parks or national parks where we can fit, and those are limited to 2 weeks. So you have to travel a little more frequently when you stay there, but they're usually less expensive and more quiet, and there's usually beautiful scenery around them.
And a lot of activities too, like when we went to Jonathan Dickinson State Park in Florida, they have top-notch, like 9 miles of mountain biking trails, like all different level of difficulties. They had hiking, they had kayak rentals, they had a swimming area, they had, of course, the tours and stuff that are run by the parks there themselves. So that, there's a lot of activities usually to do as well.
So I think we'll try 2 weeks to a month as we're making our way out west.
Except for Florida. I think we're going to spend maybe 6 weeks in Florida.
Yeah, we have to get some work done on the RV that I can't do. So we got to go out there, and they have to look at it. Then they have to order the parts. Then when the parts come in, we have to go back. So it just takes time to get that stuff done.
Yeah, but I love Florida. Even in the summertime, it doesn't matter. Last year, actually, we were in Florida in the summertime, and it's hot, yes, but I still love it. So, but another thing that affects like how long you're going to stay, like he said, is hookups. So for us in the RV, not only is the power situation that Sean's going to remedy, but also if you have a sewer hookup or water hookup, because we have a very large fifth wheel. It's 44, right? Mm-hmm. Feet long. You don't want to have to unhook that to go to a dump station. So we did buy one of those, it's like a Thetford portable sewage system. Some people call it a Blue Boy because some other brand I think is blue. The Thetford one is gray, but we got that so that I guess it hooks up to the truck.
Yeah, the ball hitch, and then you can drive that to the dump station instead of moving your RV. So
yeah. And then I also want to go to Fort Wilderness. So that's going to be a short stay because I love Fort Wilderness. That is the campground at Walt Disney World. Let me know if you've ever been there. If you want to go there, drop a note in the comments because I'm a huge Disney fan. Sean, not so much. He'll usually go with me 1 or 2 times to the parks, but I'm a huge Disney fan. I love, love, love Disney. And I love the Fort Wilderness campground, but it's like more than $100 a night. So we won't be staying there 2 weeks.
So that brings up another good point about how long do you stay and where do you go is what is your budget? Some people, we've met people that actually only almost exclusively boondock and have a very low rate of paying for campsites. Other people stay exclusively at resorts where if they have a bigger budget and can afford to do that. So that's another big trip planning thought that you need to have.
Yeah, and it's a good reason to stay a month if you have a month to stay somewhere because you can get a monthly rate. We stayed at a place in Fredericksburg, Texas in February, and the nightly rate for the large deluxe pull-through full hookup site that we had, I think was about $55. And with the monthly rate, if you took the monthly rate that we paid and divided it by 30 nights, so you'd say your average nightly rate was only like $19.33. So that's more than a 50% reduction in cost. Yeah. So if you have a month to stay, that's a great way to save money. I am noticing that some campgrounds are also having like weekly discount too, but not as much. Usually they're a monthly discount. So that's definitely a good point. And that also brings me to, we have a blog. It's chickeriestravels.com. And on there, we have a couple articles about this topic. One is the 3-step process that we use to actually choose a campground. And it talks about the different tools that we use. And we'll talk about it briefly here, but it's a little more in depth. And then there's also an article there about saving money at campgrounds. If you do want to stay at a campground and not just boondock, what are some tips for saving money? And one of those is using the monthly rate when you can. So tools, how do we pick our campgrounds?
You pick them.
I pick them. I ask him usually, what do you think about this one? But first thing we do is we look at military campgrounds. Since we both spent 20 years in the military, we have retired military ID cards. And so we're able to access bases. So that's one of the first things we look at.
Yeah.
Is if there's a military, and it's not only because it's less expensive, because it's actually not always the least expensive option. But for me, it's because after having been in the military for 20 years, I kind of feel like I'm going home when I drive onto a base. I just kind of get a little feeling, like it's familiar. Every base is, similar in a lot of aspects. So that's one way that we do. We'll look for military campgrounds, and there's a great website. I'll have to put a link to it in the description on the replay of this because I can't remember the exact URL off the top of my head, but it's a great resource for military campgrounds. And there's a map option where you can look on there and look on a map and see where the campgrounds are. So you don't have to go by states. So Marie asked if those are only available to military and veterans. And in most cases, yes. In most cases, the campgrounds are on the military base. And so you have to be, the standard is active or retired, National Guard, 100% disabled American veteran.
Reserves.
Reservists and National Guard. Not all veterans. You notice I said 100% disabled American veterans because unfortunately, if someone only did, 4 or 8 years in the military and then separated, not a military retirement because that's different. If you got like a medical retirement early, you would still have a retired ID card. But if you're just a veteran, so you just serve like a 4-year tour and then separated, you no longer have access to military bases. And so in most cases, you no longer have access to military campgrounds. But there are a few exceptions. We stayed at one in Georgia. Where was that? It was Moody's, but it wasn't on the base.
I don't remember.
It was, okay, so it was Moody Air Force Base, manages a campground. Oh, Grassy Pond.
Oh, Grassy Pond.
Yeah, Grassy Pond Recreation Area. And it's run by Moody Air Force Base. It's managed by the base, but it's actually even available to civilians, anyone who wants to. And you don't actually have to go on the base and show an ID card, I think is one of the reasons why they have that exception. So great question, Marie. Thanks for asking that. Another way that I find campgrounds is there's an app called Allstays, ALLSTAYS, and it also has like a map feature, and it's cool because it's an app you can use on your phone. They have it for iPhone and Android, and you can actually use like your current location or you can enter a location. So for people who don't like to plan, you can just go by current location. And maybe a couple hours before you're going to stop for the night, you can kind of look, 100 miles out or 50 miles out or whatever to where you are. Or if you're a planner like me, you can go on there and you can look for campgrounds. And that does also have, I think, military camp. But I think it's I don't think it's free. I think it's like a low cost. I'll research it and put that in the comments too. But I think it's like maybe $2.99, and then there's like different levels if you want to add more types of campgrounds. But it's really cheap, whatever the cost is. It's pretty much worth it. Then of course, like we like to stay at KOAs. Most of the ones we've stayed at, we've been happy with.
Yep.
They can be on the pricey side. So, someone said it's $9.99 on Android. Well, that's okay. That's not super cheap, but if you're going to use it, then I would say it would be worth it. I might try out some of the free things first. So Stacy, you said it's $9.99. Have you used it? Do you like it? I do have it and we do use it. So I guess I thought it was worth it. I don't know if it was $9.99 on iPhone or not, but I guess I felt like it was worth it because
Wow,
It also,
$9.99. That's
I know, I
expensive.
probably didn't tell him I was paying for it.
That's expensive.
Because, you know, you can do it for free on the computer. So you can go on allstate.com, and there's another website called campendium.com. Not 100% if they have an app. If they do and someone knows, you can tell me in the comments.
Just use your phone as a hotspot and log into your computer.
Yeah. Okay. So, and you can use those for free on the computer. And then, you know, there's ads like in the sidebar and stuff, but who cares, right? So she said, yeah, not getting it yet, but getting it next month. So those are some of the tools that you can use. But another great tool for finding awesome campgrounds is Facebook, social media, or any social media, really Instagram too. Because like I've said before, we use Instagram to kind of let people know where we are. I kind of just have a habit of trying to post one photo every day. It's usually like a landscape photo. Bye, Marie. Thanks for coming on. I appreciate it. So I'll go on my Instagram, and I usually try to post a photo a day, and I'll location tag it so that people have an idea of where we are. It's not always at the campground. It might be like if we're going on a hike at a local nature trail, I'll tag it for where I actually did it. But it kind of gives people an idea of where we are.
Isn't there Facebook groups about campgrounds?
Yeah, there's some, like there's one called Where'd You Stay RV, and super positive group, and social media can get kind of snarky, but oh, there's another Marie on here. Hi, Marie Baker. I was saying goodbye to Marie Gomes, but nice to have you here too. So Where'd You Stay RV is a Facebook group that is really well moderated, because you know how some social media people can be really rude and stuff. And the people on there, it's like only positivity allowed. Now, you can give I should clarify that. You can give an honest review of a campground. You can say, we didn't like it and here's why, but you can't be rude to one another. You can't say, I don't know what your problem is, or, sometimes people get kind of judgy about the type of RVing, like we're full hookup snobs, right? Because we are used to full hookup campgrounds. And we're not really snobs. It's just a preference. There's really no right or wrong way. So I just saw a discussion earlier today about 55 plus parks. So campgrounds that are geared towards people who are age 55 plus and over. Some people don't like that. You get a lot of big conversations and arguments on Facebook about that. But Where'd You Stay is awesome. It shows Walmarts. It shows Cabela's. It shows, where else can you stay for the night? Cracker Barrel.
VFW.
Yeah, I mean, so with that $9.99, you're paying for any place that you're allowed to park. It's going to show up on that app. Where'd you stay? It's more like a social media thing to say, hey, I'm going to be driving on I-40 between Louisiana and Tennessee, and what are some good places to stay, and what are some sights to see while I'm there. And then you get people's like real-time reviews.
Outdoors and More had a good question. How difficult is it to get into military campgrounds in winter in Florida? We've done a few winters in Florida. Mm-hmm. We stayed at MacDill Air Force Base, and that one's kind of difficult unless you're still active duty. But if you're not active duty, you pretty much have to call on October 1st the year before and get your reservation for the following year, because it fills up so fast. Even though they have like over 300 spots, it fills up fast. But last year we stayed at Patrick and Hurricane, and there was a lot of people from Key West that stayed there through December into January, so they can until they could get back down to Key West.
Because it had closed from the hurricane. And speaking of Key West, they actually changed that up a little bit last year. And from what I've heard, it's going to be the same way this year, where you actually go on the Navy lodging website and you do have to make a reservation. And this is for Key West Naval Air Station. And then they rotate the hookup and non-hookup. sites. So you can stay in the full hookups for 2 weeks, and then you have to rotate to dry camping. And then after 2 weeks you rotate back. But you do have to have a reservation before you go, even for the rotation. So that reservation doesn't guarantee you full hookups the whole time. It just guarantees you a spot in the rotation. And then there's a few others like Tyndall Air Force Base in Panama City. I think they do reservations like 90 days out, as does, where did we stay in
Pensacola
January?
Naval Air Station.
Pensacola Naval Air Station. They have one on the base. It's called like Oak Grove or something like that. And one 9 miles from the base that is run by the base though. And that one, also it was like reservations 90 days out, but we didn't make the decision until like a month out, and we were able to get reservations for that one easily.
In our experience, it's not as daunting as some people make it, although MacDill is pretty tough.
MacDill is tough. If you don't plan, even planning a year in advance, you could end up on a waiting list, and they have kind of like a lottery system. So that is probably the only one that is really tough.
Yeah. And then Wheeling with the Wheelers, they love Boondockers Welcome. We haven't used that yet, but we have several friends who have, and it seems pretty cool. And yeah, some of them actually have hookups. So yeah, we're looking forward to joining and trying that out at some point once I get all this electrical stuff fixed.
And I'm actually more excited about trying out Harvest Hosts. If you haven't heard of Harvest Hosts, it is, you pay like a $30 a year, I think, somewhere in that ballpark anyway, membership. And it's wineries and farms and breweries and things like that, where you can stay. It's for a night typically, and you're kind of expected to like go in and buy some wine or whatever, but I mean, who wouldn't if you were at a winery anyway, right? And we also just really like farms, so I think just being on a regular farm would be pretty awesome too. So let's see, we got someone else had a outdoors and more awesome. We're hitting the road next September. Oh, awesome. Well, congratulations. That's exciting. And Stacy said All Stays is no longer available for Android. So that's a bummer. But like I said, you can do it on the computer. And then I haven't tried Campendium, but a lot of people I know use Campendium almost exclusively. And that is on the computer as well, I know. So there's a lot of good options. And then what I do is I'm kind of just setting up a little dream wish list. Like on Instagram, I'll see a picture and I'll go, ooh. And then on Instagram, you can click on the where the person's location tagged it, if it was a campground, and you can see on a map where it is. And I'm kind of keeping a spreadsheet because, like I said, we're starting to plan now our trip out west. So I'm keeping a little spreadsheet of places that look great. And then what I'm doing is reading reviews. So that's another part of my process. I read reviews. There's a couple of different review websites. I list my favorites. I can't remember them off the top of my head, but on my blog post, if you go to chickeriestravels.com, there's a tab called resources. And then under that is trip planning. And I talk about my 3-step process, and I talk about the apps that I use the most. And not only for finding campgrounds, but for looking at reviews and for finding activities.
What else?
So those are the major things I can think of when it comes to trip planning. Is first kind of deciding what your travel style is. We have a slow travel style, we call. So our goal is to be someplace a month at a time. But we shorten it up because sometimes we just want to get somewhere. I mean, gosh, it would take us forever to travel the United States if it was always a month. So a month for our favorite places, I guess you could say, or a place that might be a hub for some good day trips. And then 2 weeks for some state parks. But we'll do some overnight stays or just a couple of days stays along the way. So determining your travel style. Also, what kind of places are you looking at? Do you want to find campgrounds? Are you trying to go to a high demand area? Those are questions you need to ask yourself because that will dictate how far in advance you need to plan. I know people who don't plan. They just use the apps, and they're more flexible than us, I would say, though. I start getting really stressed out if it's even a week beforehand and I don't know
Yeah.
where we're going to be. But we met remember, we met Dan and Lindsay of Follow Your Detour, great couple. We met them at the Florida RV Super Show. And we asked them where they were staying, and they said, we haven't decided yet. And they were there. They were there, and they had their RV just in the parking lot. And they're like, I think for $5 we can